Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a scoreboard report in Performance Matters. And this can be a really powerful tool for analyzing data about your school. We have to this point really focused on baseball card, and you'll recall that we go to the reports icon on the left side of your screen, and that baseball card is the first report that you have. I'm going to demonstrate for you the difference between these two reports, and hopefully that'll help you to understand the advantage of using the scoreboard report as well as the baseball card report. So I'm in the current year over here. Everett SD2 is on my right top there. I'm going to click on baseball card. And I see all of my students. So let's imagine that I want to know how my students did on last year's math state assessment. So I'm just going to pull up last year, 22-23, and I see in my high school, I have students who took the 8th grade test last year and the 10th grade test. So these be our 9th and our 11th graders. And let's go ahead and just focus on our incoming 9th graders because it's the beginning of the year. So I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to pop those two scores in. I'm also going to put the index in because I like to know how close my students are to meeting standard. So I'll go here and pick my math index. There we go. All right. And I said incoming 9th graders, so let's go ahead and put their current grade here. So notice this becomes a column in my report, that demographic. And in fact, I might have an interest in my LEP students, my English learners, my multilingual learners. So I'm going to put that column in as well. Now, I really want to focus on the incoming 9th graders. So I'm going to use this add filter to take the grade and filter down to my 9th graders. There we go. So we have student name, current year, LEP, and then the math data from 8th grade. And this is very useful. We can sort it from high to low, low to high. We can look at the index score and see how they're doing. We can add more information, and we can filter students out. We can filter out the ones who didn't take the test by clicking on the white and applying our swatching. And because we start with a student, we can aggregate this data up. So I can go to Manage Columns, remove the student name, and now I'm going to get my 9th graders who are yes, LEP, and my 9th graders who are no. And I can see the breakdown, the percentage of students in each of these areas. And it's pretty obvious to me that my LEP yes students are struggling. Now, there's only 22 of them in the current 9th grade who took an 8th grade test last year. But I can see that aggregation. All right, so let me show you now the advantage of using a scoreboard card for similar data, or we'll even use the same data. So I'm going to go back to scoreboard, or excuse me, back to report. I'm going to pull up a scoreboard report. And notice we have all of our students here, or all of our schools. And I'm going to close these regions up so we're seeing all the students that are in our schools here. All right, so I was interested in just 9th graders. And so instead of having a managed columns here, notice there's no managed columns icon. So there's no way to put a column in here for 9th grade, but I can add a filter for grade. And if I click on that filter for 9th grade, now my students are substantially reduced. And notice there's no region 1 now because region 1 doesn't have any 9th graders. That's all an elementary region. All right, so I can tell I've filtered it for 9th grade. I'm going to add my data in. So same folder system. And we're going to look for tested grade 8. Here we go. If I use this plus sign right here next to achievement level, I am adding all data for the group I filtered in this column. All right. So this is for the all. If I want to look at now just LEP students, I could add that as a filter here, but most of the time, what I want to know is how did a group of students compare to another group of students? All right. So this time, instead of adding another filter to the students, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and you see these tiny 3 gray dots. I'm going to click on that. And I can add a column for each of the genders. I can add a column for the ethnicities and the subgroups and ethnicities. So I'm going to start way down here where you get all 14 columns. All right. When you do that, you get the all again, so we don't need to have all twice. Notice that underneath the student filter in each column, there's a blue pill that describes what you're seeing in that column. So this is students with disabilities. ED is the East Coast way of saying free and reduced lunch. LEP, that's our multilingual learners. And then you see our genders here, male, female, non-binary, and then all of our ethnicities. Now, the first thing that I would do is I'm going to open up region 3 here. We have 2 different schools. I would look all the way across at my data. So here's my all, pretty evenly spaced 1 and 2, more 4s, which is awesome. I'm only looking at current 9th graders. Here's our students with disabilities, lots of red. Here's our low income and our LEP. Now, if I am a principal, I might right away clue into these 3 categories right off the bat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on the LEP. So I'm going to close those 2 categories so that it's all compared to LEP, limited English proficiency. A pro tip here, don't forget you have your share button. Grab this link and save it. You can always come back to this view right here. Every time you change something, you should grab a new link. All right. So first thing, LEP. Now notice here's male and female. If I look at these 2, there is really not too much of a difference. So that's not going to really help me to understand student learning much more just by looking at these 2. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get rid of gender altogether. All right, so now I have my ethnicities. This is very small, so I'm going to get rid of my American Indian, not because it's not important, but it's not really going to help me to understand anything if there's just 1 or 2 students. Here is my Asian students, and I can see quite a lot more blue. So they are not quite the challenge that I want to look for here. Here is Caucasian, pretty evenly dispersed, less 4 than the all. My Pacific Islander Hawaii students, very small. And here's my Hispanic group, which is larger than the other groups. And here is multiracial. And here's African American. So I'm going to focus on, I'm going to slide our African American students over here for the time being. So here we have all, limited English proficiency, and Hispanic. So I'm curious about something. I am curious about the difference between Hispanic students who are LEP and students who are not. So what I can do is take this column where it automatically has that Hispanic filter, and let's add LEP no to that. So these are Hispanic students, not LEP. This is LEP yes, so I'm going to add Hispanic to that column. So now I have Hispanic, Hispanic, Hispanic yes LEP, Hispanic no LEP. And now we have something interesting to consider. Now, this is a much smaller population, but the LEP yes, very much doing less well. Now we've lost these two groups separately, so I could come over here in these two columns that I saved and just say, let me cancel that. I could get rid of these pills, and I could say, well, I also just want to be reminded, how did these groups do separate from each other? So all right, and I'm gonna drag our Hispanic over here by all. I'm gonna drag LEP over by that. So now we have all students, Hispanic students, LEP students, and then Hispanic yes LEP, Hispanic no LEP. So now we have some data that can help us to narrow down how we might want to support students. So our Hispanic students here that are not LEP, they have 36% of the kids in level one, 24 and 2. So that's 60% of students, 24 and 36. And if we look at the all, we have 22 and 20, so 42. So Hispanic students who are not LEP, they're not doing as well as all students combined. They are doing better though than our Hispanic students who are at 43 plus 22 is 65. So a little bit better than that. And they're definitely doing better than our LEP students. 68 plus 14 is 78, 82. And then if you're Hispanic and LEP, 100% of students are in level 1 and 2. So now we have a way for us to dig in, okay? All right, so if we expand this, then what we get is our drill down. So we start with our school and then our teachers and then the sections that our teachers have. And then as we drill into the sections, we actually see our students. So notice that there are a bunch of students who only have scores in this column. That's because they are only in the all. But then we have this student here who has in this column, all, in the ethnicity column for Hispanic, and then ethnicity plus LEP no. So this student is Hispanic no. Let me open up some other, see if I can find some other, oops. Yeah. I want to do that. Here we go, algebra. All right. So here we have some students who are in the all, they're Hispanic, they are LEP, so they're showing up in this data here as level 1. And this is a student, so I could dig into this student by clicking on that student's name and learn more about that student. So again, as we talked about the baseball card, you would be seeing their demographics in columns. and you would start with students that you could aggregate up to. But with the scoreboard, you can filter the groups. And by the way, you can click on hide rows with no scores. That cleans it up quite a lot. So you can filter who's in the student group, and then you can filter each column by really anything that you want. Let's say, for example, you did not want to look at ethnicity, you wanted to look at students with disabilities. Yes. So here's students with disabilities, here's LEP. And we could add them together. So in this column, we could say, this is LEP and students with disabilities, and we could just get rid of that column. And then if we want to dig more deeply, let's say we want to find out who's in the blue here, then we could dig in to our classes. That one's still expanded, as is that one. And we can see here's a bunch of blue right here. Here's a bunch of blue. So we know where they are, and we can examine what classes they're taking. How are those classes preparing them or not preparing them? What classes are they struggling in? It helps us to understand, do we have a good class placement for students? Now, using this in conjunction with a baseball card is really powerful too. So let's say that I have decided the limited English proficiency students, they're really struggling, and I want to know more about that. So let's go back to the baseball card. And let's filter our students for current LEP. And I'm also going to make sure that our monitoring students are in. That's under the custom report there. All right. So I know their ethnicity. I don't know their ethnicity yet. I'm going to put in grade 9 because we're going to look at the 8th grade test. All right, so again, now we see the demographics in columns, not like in the scoreboard where the demographics went with the measure. We're going to go back and do our math because that's what we're concerned about. And maybe our theory is that students who are LEP struggle to understand math. Maybe that's our theory. Now I'm going to go to additional assessments, and I'm going to take the ML progressing, and I'm going to see how my students did in 21 and 22. So for example, this student right here is a P1 or P2 to P2. That's stagnant, right? P1 to P2, that's growth, all right? Now, one thing that really matters for me is, well, how long have these students been in the country, and what are their language, what's their language background? So I'm gonna go under the WIDA under additional assessments, and I'm going to put in their US enrollment date, their native language, and their home language. And I would like to have this closer to the demographics, so I'm going to just slide it over. All right. And I'm going to take out anyone without a state assessment score, because that's what I was looking at, my incoming 9th graders. All right. All right, so here I have a level 1. He went from P1 to P2. That's good, progressing. But look at when this student came in, 2015. He's been here 8 years. Level 1 in math, and he's just now getting to P2. Here's a student who's been here since 2014, level 1 in math, and he's been emerging the last 2 years, and I would wonder if he's always been emerging. So with this view, now we can test some of the assumptions that we made in our scoreboard report, right? We could compare our students by their ethnicity. They're all either LEP or being monitored. We could sort it by their progressing level. So we have an E to an E, P1 to a P1, P1 to P1. These guys are concerned that child went backwards. This is moving forward. So you have some who are moving forward, but you have some who are moving backwards. And this can help you to narrow down who needs intervention and where you might get some gains, because we certainly don't want students who are in level 1 or 2 to remain there in that math test. And that was our original question. How are they doing in math less well or better? In fact, you could take out the kids who in 8th grade were a level 3 or 4 in math, right? Apply that swatching. And now you have students who are level 1 or 2. You know where they are in progressing. You know when they arrived, and you know what language they're speaking at home and have spoken in the past. All right. So today we talked about the baseball card and scoreboard, and really focusing on how you might use scoreboard to identify and analyze a problem, and then support that with baseball card. Remember, you can always grab the link so that you can come back to your report, and you can share the link, and your staff will only see those students who are in their security field. If you have ideas about other things you'd like to learn about in Performance Matters, please don't hesitate to contact Assessment and Research, and appreciate you watching the video today.